Who is going to be the first person in the comments to go, who?
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Listography. Jason and Kramzer here. Joe taking another week off. This week, we are ranking the studio albums of The National. The National released their first record in 2001, a point in which Joe has no interest in music after the 90s. So that's why he's not here today, I guess. But we both like The National quite a lot. So we'll do it without him. Thoughts before going in? How many records did you know?
I knew all of them, Jason. I knew all of them. My thoughts going in were notably one of the artists that, like when we do our decade wrap-ups, The National for me, for like the aughts and the 2010s, or an artist that was usually just out of my top 5. So if you watched albums of the year, you can't really get a good grasp of how much I like them, but I like them a lot. And this is probably the first time since listening to them I've ever done like a full just like National dive. Like it's always been like, oh, they have a release, I'll check it out. And almost every single album of theirs just grows on me more and more every time I listen to it. Like everything is almost a full star more than it was a year or two ago. And yeah, right now my height of National love is just huge because I think just doing it all at once gave me an entirely different perspective on it. And yeah, I'm in love with it right now. I heard them for the first time in college, right around the time The Boxer came out. There was a little indie drama with Sam Rockwell and I think Kate Beckinsale called Snow Angels, and they used the song Slow Show in the trailer for it. Not a very good movie, made like no money. No one remembers it, but I remember checking them out and discovering The National by looking up that song.
All right. So yeah, I've heard every album before this. I first heard them from my friend Ed. You know Ed? He was a big fan going pretty far back. I think he was talking about them, at least by like the second album. And I would check them out and I didn't think a whole lot of them. And I listened to The Boxer in full when it came out. Thought it was okay. But High Violet, when that came out, that's what really grabbed me, really hooked me in. That's where I kind of started with them. Shall we get into it?
Yeah, and it's weird that like their first, before we get into the albums too much, like their first couple albums are a lot more Americana and like alt country than you would think. So I don't know why they didn't get attention with other bands at that time, like Gomez and stuff like that, like other bands that Ed and you guys liked a lot from that era. I don't know why The National never really got lumped in with them. They'd have even more fans. But you want me to start or do you want to start?
I can start, I guess. My number 8 is The National, the debut album, self-titled 2001. This was made before Bryce Dessner was even a full member. It's before they had ever played a show as The National. They made this record. It's got a very direct, organic sound, bass, drums, guitar, vocals, very much just like a very simple type of arrangements. There's some organ on there and occasionally like a little gurgling synthesizer, but for the most part, it's just like dudes in a room playing. I think right out of the gate on the first record, Matt Berninger's vocals kind of steal the show, immediately give the band a distinct identity. But beyond that, I don't think there's a ton to get excited about musically. The songs are fine, but I don't know if I don't know. They don't really take the songs and make them more interesting. They don't really do a lot with the material, I think. Arrangement-wise, it's all very simple. Nothing really hooks you in musically, even though they're decently well-written songs. So that's kind of how I feel about this record. There are a few standouts that I like. Sun, I think, is a great track. John's Star is another really cool track with cool electric piano on it. So a decent record, good for a debut, but nowhere near some of their other stuff. I have it at 3 stars.
I have it much higher. Was really hoping that maybe we would be leading the brigade about getting that one higher, but I guess I'll have to do it myself. I only have a couple below 3 stars. And like I said before, even though I've heard most of these albums 4 to 5 times at least, it'll probably grow on me. I'm very picky about my number 8. I have it at 2.5, which means it's decent. There's definitely some good stuff on it. But overall, I think it's just kind of a weaker album listen. I've got Sleep Well Beast from 2017. This comes after Trouble Will Find Me. And I feel like they took such great steps pretty much in every album that this one was the first kind of just like, maybe pothole in the road a little bit. Kind of feels like it's thrown together a little. I don't think there's like a really profound idea or approach to it. And it's like not a notable step in the evolution of the band here, musically or thematic. There's not a real unified vision. Lots of ideas after Trouble Will Find Me, but kind of just instead of doubling down on some of them or one of them, they kind of just throw them all into it. And it's all kind of just like half-assed, or there's just too much going on, whatever the case. And it's got a much more synthetic sound here, different guitar tones. You're getting like this cosmic kind of vibe a little bit, synths coming in. Like if it sounded like Trouble Will Find Me, they were like in heaven, which is what I'll talk about later. Like it's a very heavenly album. This one is getting into galactic territory a little bit, which I don't really like. Great low-key piano opener with Nobody Else Will Be There. Really cool vibe. Good pace behind Day I Die. But then like I feel like all of these production touches they do with this newer sound just kind of loses me. I feel so betrayed as someone who likes the National a lot. And it's not even like a huge thing. It's very detailed, and it's just like it just distracts me from enjoying it. Doesn't fit their sound, I don't think. They keep a lot of this after this album, but really just give it more nuance and rein it in a little bit. But it's just too much. Like Dreams in Total Darkness is kind of cool, but the guitar tone I don't know about. I just don't see like the motivation other than just like they wanted to do something different. I understand bands wanting to do different things. There's not a lot of super growth on this album. And they're just like these random garnishes on the songs. Like you get something very different with like Turtleneck, and that's like a good active idea to do something different with their sound instead of just blooping a little bleeps and bloops and synth part here and there over a normal National song. And then you're also taking some of the drumming away with more electronic beats. And to me, the star of the National are the lyrics and the drumming. I think he's one of the more underrated drummers of the last 20 years. So yeah, it's just kind of a current theme here. Like I'll Still Destroy You, the electronic beat, not for me. Just takes all the heart and soul out of like Devendorf's drum work. It's not on this album, even though halfway through he'll come in. All he's doing is just doubling over the electronic stuff, and he'll go nuts at the end, but he just writes insanely good drum parts. You don't really get him much here. Guilty Party is a really well-written tune on this, but again, these sporadic, unmotivated bleeps and bloops. Yeah, 2.5 might be a little bit just fanboy complaining that it's not the National I want, but that's what we do here. Totally subjective. I don't reach for this very often. Hopefully it'll grow on me. 2.5 stars. Dark Side of the Gym, probably my favorite song on it. That's where I got it.
Well, I suspected going into this before we revealed our bottom selections that we were going to have extremely different lists. And so far, that is looking to be true. But I do agree with you. The star of the National are the lyrics and the drumming, for sure. My number 7 is their second record, Sad Songs for Dirty Lovers, from 2003. You get the full lineup in place on this record. The opening track immediately steps things up in terms of production and recording quality. There's more space in the mix. There's more atmosphere. It's just a better mixed, better sounding record than the debut. But I still don't think they've quite found their niche musically. This record has a lot of, I think probably more than any of their other records, this has the most of that kind of country, Americana, folky thing going on, more acoustic guitar and stuff like that on this record. There's maybe a little bit of like a Bill Callahan and Smog type influence on this record too, but I think they're still searching for their sound. I don't think they've quite pointed yet what they're good at. I think that is the difference between like the other bands that you were talking about, like, I don't know, whatever other alt country Americana bands were going on at the time, and them. I just don't think this is them exactly. This isn't who it doesn't feel totally natural for them to be doing that type of music. Maybe that's just hindsight, knowing where they went eventually afterwards, but that's how it feels a little to me. But yeah, just in every facet, though, it's still a better record than the one before. A big step forward, I think. Favorite track on it's probably Fashion Coat, but I'm still sticking at 3 stars for this one.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, one of my, my favorite, other than the lyrics and the drumming, or although including those, is the sound of the National is really cool. It's like kind of straight up and streamlined and easy, but also different at the same time. Hard to explain. They just have a really good wall of sound of their own. But I like those original couple records more than most for what they are. Here's where I'm going to piss off the National Allegiance. This one I like. I've got it at 3 stars, number 7, but it doesn't click with me the way it clicks for a lot of people. And I've got Alligator here. I know that's like their first big album that kind of put them on the map. A lot of people consider it their best or among their best, and I still think it's good. And I'm not sure quite what it is that I don't love about it as much as everyone else. A little bit of a different sound. They abandon a lot more of the Americana country kind of vibes that they had on the first 2, especially on Sad Songs for Dirty Lovers. Secret Meeting is really cool, different sound with a fluttering guitar, a bit whimsical here. There's a really nice live spunky feel. The shouting in the background nice on there. One thing I really like about their dynamic, and you can tell, and this doesn't work for every band, but there's almost just sort of a segregation of the duties. Like Dessner and everyone else kind of write the music, and then Matt comes in and melodies and lyrics, and it's just a great partnership. It's terrific. And that's what I really like about their composition. It seems like it's just dudes in a room playing, coming up with really cool, chord progressions, compositions, which are usually just nice and have great emotional lifts to them. They run almost entirely on feeling, which is really cool. Lit Up is a decent little rocker, but I don't really think the vocals match it. I think it needs a little bit more just coming up short because there's such like a big explosive sound behind it. He'll get much better at that. And, he's a tough singer to get into with that really deep voice. I like it. I can't imagine the National without it. But there are moments throughout the discography where I wonder if I would like certain songs with different singers. Still like them. Not crazy about Looking for Astronauts. Daughters of the Soho Riots is really cool. Also just like a really cool title, objectively. I like all of the songs, themes, and lyrics here, but I think there's just something missing musically for me. I'm not really sure what it is. All the Wine is a great song. Abel is great, obviously. I like kind of the Baroque touches. The instrumentations of Geese of Beverly Road is amazing. I think overall the album just comes off as a little just like tense, not like in the themes and the lyrics and the style, but just like they felt under pressure, and it comes off a little bit moody and sour. The second half is definitely better than the first, which I think if you're going to have one half be better than the other, it's got to be the first half, because otherwise you're just treading water for the first 20 to 25 minutes. So I think that probably hurts the score a little bit, but I'm keeping it at 3 stars. I still think it's good. Number 7, Alligator.
For me, the National, so many bands come out with a big, like huge debut, and then they have trouble topping it. To me, the National kind of took the approach of a lot of 70s bands where they kind of had development over a number of records. So I don't think putting Alligator kind of in the bottom half is really out of line. I'm a little surprised you have it below the first 2, though, because I think there's a clear evolution going on. And for me, Alligator is my number 6, staying chronological so far. I think Secret Meeting is the first like true National song where they find their sound, and like now we know kind of what we're doing. I think Berninger kind of finds his voice on this song, on the title track, and on this record in general. He kind of finds his voice. A line like, "Sorry I missed you, I was having a secret meeting in the basement of my brain," is such like a typical lyric of his. Like those types of lines become the cornerstone of the National from here on out. I think he's so many good lines like that. He drums up a lot of really cool imagery with his lyrics. Don't always know what the hell he's talking about, but I think they're always fascinating. Also on this record, I think is where the drums take a huge step forward and become a very important part of their sound. And I agree. Bryan Devendorf is tremendously underrated. I mean, I think he's technically solid, a good drummer, but he writes amazing parts for the songs that are so unique and interesting, really great. That's my favorite type of drummer, people that do that. So I think he's fantastic. I think they're just starting to find all these things that work. The guitar sounds like on a track like Looking for Astronauts, the drums, the type of lyrics that he's writing, the overall mixing and production. It's all starting to kind of take shape and come together on this record. Daughters of the Soho Riots is a great track, great drumming on that as well. Friend of Mine is great. I just don't think it's quite firing on all cylinders yet. Like, now they know what they have to do. They figured it out, and now they just need to take it a little further. So I think it's a good record, 3.5 stars for it, but still better to come.
Okay. Generally, my half star behind you kind of puts us in line with each other. So 3.5 to 3, we're about on the same page. Yeah, I think I really like the first 2 records, which I'm about to talk about one of them, because I think the lyrics and just kind of the style of the first 2 really suit. And then on Alligator, you're right, they're fine who they are, but they're not on all cylinders. So it's a really important record because they find what they can do musically. But I do think some of the soul and some of the just songs suffer a little bit. Like, I think there's better songs on the first 2 albums than there is on Alligator, including Sad Songs for Dirty Lovers, which is my number 6, and I've got it at 3.5, which means I think it's really good. Often a little bit bouncier and fuller, but still with like that somber, moody Americana. I don't know how to describe it. It's not entirely alt country. It's a little more art house than that. It's like alt country. I don't know. It's cool though, especially because of his lyrics are just phenomenal. Cardinal Song is beautiful. Love the fiddle at the end. Same with 90-Minute Waterwall. I like the spontaneity that they kind of introduce on this album compared to the first one. A lot of songs kind of just take left turns and either just like go off on a little jam and end, or they circle around, or they just go somewhere else. I don't think there's many duds here at all. I think they're for the first one, obviously I haven't mentioned it yet, but this one is pretty close. There's nothing really. Maybe Thirsty or Sugar Wife are the only tracks I don't really like. I think Lucky You is a great closer. I think it's just a really good young band that's finding themselves and putting out really good songs. And it is kind of taking the 70s blueprint, or at least the old school blueprint, where you use those first kind of records to find yourself, get loose, and then, you kind of perfect it later on. But I really like this loose approach here because the songwriting is just so natural, and you can just tell. I think you can tell what their strengths are going to be yet, even if they don't know themselves. But it's there, man. Like, it's ready to fight. I think if they were to do this album in like 2015 or something with like more of their studio awareness, it would be a huge success. Probably the same with the first one, although I think the first one has more just kind of raw charm to it than this one. 3.5 for Sad Songs for Dirty Lovers, number 6.
All right. Well, I am staying chronological, which may upset some people. My number 5 is The Boxer, which I think for at least a number of National fans might be, a lot of people's favorite. I remember this getting a lot of publicity when it came out, especially the end of the year list. That's when I really became aware of like a lot of people talking about this band beyond just Ed. It seemed like they really broke through with this one. I think they do go a step further in nailing down their sound. My issue with this record is, I don't know, it feels a lot like Arcade Fire to me on this record. They're kind of like taking these mopey, downtrodden indie rock tunes and just making them bigger, trying to kind of, build these songs into anthems. Everything feels too big on this record for me for the songwriting. And I don't know, the songs just don't grab me. And, it's worth pointing out that of the big three first Arcade Fire records, the first one, Funeral, is my least favorite. So I think there's a common thread there. It's just, I feel like the arrangements don't exactly support the songs in the best way. I think it's a little overpowering and a little distracting, some of the production on this. I think Apartment Story is a good example of where this happens. Guest Room too. I think if you pay attention to the drums, especially if like going back and forth between those tracks and High Violet, you can really see the different approach. The drums being much more subdued and kind of quiet and in the background on High Violet, where here everything's just kind of overpowering. And I think it overwhelms the songs a little bit. And as a result, those songs don't stick with me as much melodically. I don't find them as memorable. I do still think it's a good record. I think there's good songs. Slow Show's great. Gospel, kind of the more low-key numbers on the record work more for me. Good record. 3.5 stars, but I do have a few little issues with it where I don't quite like it as much as a lot of national fans.
Yeah, I know you, so I get where you're coming from. Funeral is my favorite Arcade Fire album. You are almost 98 to 99% correct with your less is more statements, but I don't think you're right about The Boxer. I think it's perfectly riding the line, but to each their own. My number 5 is going to be the national debut. Good shout about the Arcade Fire reference because I've got it here, but for a different reason. It sounds like Arcade Fire's not Funeral, but their self-titled EP, which came out before Funeral. Sounds a lot like that, actually, which is fine. This one's actually first, I believe. But yeah, it's got just like classic, very early 2000s mellow indie vibe. We talked a little bit on Built to Spill, and I'm not sure quite how to articulate that sound, but it's not slow and sad, but it's mellow and there's drums and it's still kind of upbeat. It's like Built to Spill, we talked about, did this. Broken Social Scene, Arcade Fire. This album has that all over. The writing and the vibes here are really nice. I do think he's a good singer. I'm not sure about his performance on this album here, though. I think it would be, and I've got this album at 3.5 stars. I think it's really good. I think it could be even higher if he was just a little bit more comfortable and confident. But the methodical, mellow, slow nature of it makes the lyrics so relevant to me on this album, especially seeing how like Americana can be sometimes, like American Mary, and these little kind of like interesting like fables and stuff. And I think the Americana feel to it with the stripped down kind of property and the complex poetry is just such a cool marriage. It's like little journal entries into these like grand sagas, much more familiar songs on here with like firsthand accounts of family members and like directly talking about his subject matter. He also criticizes American manhood a lot on this album, which I think is really cool. Pay For Me is really good. Very alt country. The slide guitar and the backing vocals I love. Sun is probably my favorite song on here. Good shout about that before. Some of it misses the mark a little bit, and some of the lyrics do too. I'd never noticed until listening to all of them the past couple of weeks. Talks about spider webs a lot in lyrics, and for some reason that just kind of always stuck with me every time he mentioned spider webs. I was like, why is he bringing up spider webs again? And talks about it in Bitters and Absolute. Watching You Well, really great. Early kind of My Morning Jacket vibes on a lot of these songs. 29 Years, really cool because those lyrics come back in like some other material, like on Slow Show. Very cool. I just think it's got a really cool, raw Americana feel, a little bit distinct, but also in the same category as a lot of other stuff. And even though the drumming will go a lot better, I think there's some really cool stuff here, especially just with like simple and really just raw tribal kind of feel to it for a few songs. Like on Sun, those drums are really cool by Devendorf. So 3.5 stars for me at number 5. And then yeah, it's just gonna be 4 stars and up. Just great albums after this.
All right, my number 4, as I mentioned, I loved High Violet when it came out. Going at number 4 with its follow-up, Trouble Will Find Me, which when it came out, gave it a couple listens and it did not grab me. It went and sat on my shelf for a long time. Over time, though, and over the last few years, has grown on me a good bit, to the point where now it's a 4-star record for me. But this week listening to it, I've been like trying to figure out what it is about it that didn't grab me initially and what still doesn't entirely grab me. And I don't know, I've had trouble like pinpointing what it is about this record. I think it sounds good. It has cool songs. It feels a little uninspired though, and a little bit like a remake of High Violet. It's a similar record, but it's a little cleaner, and it doesn't have the kind of like claustrophobic anxiousness, paranoia type of feel that makes High Violet so interesting. This one just seems a little more plain, a little more sanitary. The Last Time has a drum beat that's kind of similar to some of the tracks on High Violet, but it doesn't really create the same feelings. If you compare it to like Lemon World and the way that beat on that song really pushes that song, it just doesn't really do that here. And I feel like a lot of this record just kind of lays kind of flat, not quite as interesting, even though it's doing a lot of the same things. So I just think it's a tick weaker. I think the last 4 songs especially are the ones that have kind of pulled me in recently, that have made me appreciate the album more. I think it comes on strong at the end. I Need My Girl, Humiliation, Pink Rabbits, Hard to Find are fantastic tracks. I like them all. On the whole, I think the record is solid, really good, but it feels kind of low stakes for where they were in their career at the time. Still going 4 stars, like it, but only number 4 for me.
Low stakes. Yeah, that's kind of how I would describe Sleep Well Beast, my number 8. It feels just like, as far as the evolution of the band, you can almost take that one out and still get to where you're going. But I disagree immensely with Trouble Will Find Me. I've got at number 4, I Am Easy to Find. And I've got this at 4 stars and pretty close to 4.5. Didn't like Sleep Well Beast, obviously, but I think this one is a good return to form. I think they needed to come up with something big, something to make them grow as a band. And obviously they did with, just being like, let's bring in a lot of female vocalists and duet these. And the marriage between the higher pitched female vocals and his lower is just so damn good on this album. It seems like an easy, obvious decision to make, but who cares? The result is just so good. You get so many great choices of artists on here. A lot of methodical, just kind of straight up big national sound pop rock, piano ballads, and emotional bottled up tension sort of songs. You get some of the production and ideas and the instruments and the sounds from Sleep Well Beast, but there's a lot more nuance and touch to it here. Roman Holiday is great. All of these songs would be fine, like not fine in a derogatory sense. Like they're all really good songs, but bringing in the extra, the duet sort of nature just shoots it to the moon. Oblivions is great. I think maybe it suffers a little bit from its, similar tempo throughout, which you could probably say about some of the other albums, but this one, there's just not a whole lot of difference in the songs, especially in the first half. But the songs on their own are just so damn enjoyable. Yeah, just like that angelic whisper of the selected cast. And I think he's getting pushed as a vocalist too by these other artists. Like there are some songs on here where he's doing some things where never really heard him do before, which I really like. Yeah, I think maybe it's a touch too long. I could do without the little instrumental short one, Underwater, and maybe Light Years at the end. But overall, I just think it's really good. 4 stars. I don't think it made my top 5 in albums of the year 2019. I don't think the National ever made my top 5. I can't remember. Some listography fan / historian out there, fact check me there. But number 4, really strong 4 stars. I Am Easy to Find.
All right, my number, where am I? 3, Kramzer's least favorite National album. I've got Sleep Well Beast. I think they continue to do their thing that they've been doing for a few records now, but this one doesn't feel as flat to me. It doesn't feel like a rehash of the one before it. This one feels like them pushing forward a little bit, even though they're not changing the formula really much at all. But I think the songwriting on it is great. The credits on this record are extensive. You've got tons of horn players, string players, featured special guests like Lisa Hannigan, Justin Vernon, Josh Kaufman, Walter Martin, just tons of people involved. There's like 5 different engineers on it. It's lush. I think it's full sounding. It combines the best of High Violet and Trouble Will Find Me in terms of its sound. Really cool guitar on it, especially on the System Only Dreams and Total Darkness. Turtleneck has some pretty aggressive guitars on it too. Karen at the Liquor Store is a great piano ballad. I love the quieter sound on that during the solo. Really cool, really haunting. Got lush strings, kind of glitchy beats in places, distorted guitars, and they kind of all rub up against each other in really cool, interesting, unique ways on this record. I think it creates really cool and a different sound for them. Not really quite like anything else in their catalog, but at the core, the songwriting is still what they've been doing and what they're good at. So I dig it. I disagree about some of the electronic flourishes. I think it brings the whole record, a distinct sound. It makes this record what it is, and I like it. So 4.5 stars, Sleepwell Beast.
All right, my number 3 is going to be High Violet, which I have at 4.499999999. Really close to 4.5, but just at 4. Right off the bat, sure do talk about spiders a lot again, but that's beside the point. Terrible Love, decent opener. I adore Sorrow. I think Sorrow is amazing. I'm surprised to hear the critique about taking these songs and making them like Arcade Fire anthemic, because I know you like High Violet a lot, and I feel like they do it here probably more so than any other album. They're turning everything up here, going a lot more powerful, more emotion, more volume, more passion, you name it. Sorrow is a great example if you want to know what we're talking about, because I share that sentiment that that's my favorite kind of drummer. The drum writing. What is good drum writing? This is it. I love the drum part on this song. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's simple. It's great. I don't know if his voice and style fits a song better than the song Sorrow. It's amazing. There's great rhythm and arrangements throughout this album with sharp. I love the little sharp string little punches like in Little Faith. That's great too. And the bigger sound just makes everything more meaningful. I really dig it. Love that in front of everyone. Drums are just ridiculously awesome at the end of the track. You get really cool Interpol vibes on there. The album's like rich in its detail, but it's never cluttered. And walking that line is always so tricky, and they just do it really well. Their sound on this album is just so smooth. I don't know how to describe it. It's like streamlined and smooth and just sounds so effortless and so empowered. But at the same time, the natural feel of the songs never get lost and the lyrics never get overwhelmed. Blood Buzz Ohio is great. Again, the drums just amazing. What is it with rock and rollers just really resenting Ohio after they leave? They don't care for it much, but it is what it is. Conversation 16 and England are both great. Just like the way like the songs are just driven by the percussive, emotional percussion, just like action driven emotional rock album. I think it's really cool the way they can conjure up feelings while also just do like these straight up like rockers. I think it's really, really difficult to do. I love the way I feel when I listen to these songs. I feel like I'm enlightened, uplifted, energized, but also like under a lot of pressure for some reason. Putting on Blood Buzz Ohio when you're trying to make the train before it takes off is awesome. You're just like running up the stairs. It's great. I've got High Violet, number 3, 4 stars, strong 4 stars.
All right, my number 2 is going to be I Am Easy to Find, the most recent record from 2017. Like Cram talked about, the obvious thing about this record is that it is essentially an album of duets with a guest female vocalist on every single track, which on paper would not really excite me. I would think that would come off feeling kind of forced and a little gimmicky, but it doesn't feel that way at all. Not forced one bit. Every guest performance feels like an essential part of the song, and not like, oh, we got this person that wants to be on a song, let's throw them on it. It feels carefully constructed in that way where all of these guest spots are essential to the songs, and they all do, deliver great performances. Galen Dorsey provides vocals on several tracks. She's a well-known bass player. She played with Bowie. She played with Lenny Kravitz. She would do the Freddie Mercury parts when Bowie would do Under Pressure. She sounds great here. Sharon Van Etten's great on it. Kate Stables from This Is the Kit is great. Lisa Hannigan, who kind of came to fame playing with Damien Rice. Everybody on here is good. And it, like I said, it all feels very like carefully considered, like a full statement, not just like a scattered assortment of people coming in, which I think is the great thing about it. The songwriting is so good on here. Apparently they started making this record from scraps that were left over from Sleep Well Beast, which is, incredible. I think the songs here do not feel like leftovers at all. The whole project came about when they were approached by filmmaker Mike Mills, who's not the same person as the bass player in REM. But he wanted to do like a collaboration short film with them. Admittedly, I have not watched the whole thing. I've watched bits of it. But with or without the movie, it just works extremely well. I think it's a very mature record, maturely produced, maturely written, a lot of restraint in the production. It doesn't get too big or, it just, everything feels right about it. It's really good. 4.5 stars.
Leftovers, huh? Damn, I wish I had leftovers like Roman Holiday and I'm Not in Kansas. Like, oh, geez. Number 2 is going to be at 4.5 stars. Got Boxer, the first album I ever listened to. Great flow to the album. The songs here, compared to the first 3, I feel are much more fluid and interwoven here. There's like a smoothness and like a caress to it almost. It's a really tender feel to this album. I think it's tremendous. But the moments where the drums and the piano can shine on this album are well taken advantage of. They really steal the show. You get a fantastic 1-2 punch with Fake Empire and Mistaken for Strangers right off the bat. I think the first half of it is a 5-star album. Second half is nothing to worry about. It's just not quite as good, which probably brings it down from 5-star to 4.5, but it's still got a bunch of really good songs. I think Gospel at the end is tremendous. Apartment Story is still really good. Ada, but you get so many just classics here. I think before they went a little bit louder and fuller with High Violet, you just get a really, really good sense of everyone's kind of role here, which I think is really great. Bass work is really nice. Maybe my favorite drum album by Devendorf here. I'm not positive, but yeah, I think this is just like a really warm, rich, lovely album without being like a touchstone album. Like, it's not abundantly sweet. Something really, the realism of their writing is great. Like, he can write these love songs that aren't fantastical. They're not dreamy. They're not romanticized. They're just really grounded. Like Apartment Story and Slow Show, just, you get such these emotional reactions as love songs in a way. Just the sentiment of like having a tough life and a tough day at work and wanting to come home and just doing a stupid dance for your partner, and just like great lyrics to Slow Show. It's tremendous. I think the drumming on Fake Empire is fantastic. Just that beat has so much cool, just little style and feel to it. Yeah, I think this is kind of the album where you can start and get a barometer if you're going to like the National or not. So 4.5 stars. Number 2 did not, I don't even know if it was on my top 10 for 2007, because that's just a disgusting year, so loaded. But I know it showed up in a lot of our commenters' top 10s for years. So finally, we're giving you the National love here. We love it.
So one thing that I forgot to mention when talking about I Am Easy to Find is that Berninger said that he was basically burnt out writing lyrics. So his wife wrote a lot of the lyrics for the record, which I think maybe is part of the reason the female guest spots work so well as you're getting. It's kind of multiple perspectives anyway in the writing. But moving on to my number 1, High Violet from 2010. The only one of their records, I think, to make my top 5 in the Albums of the Year series. Didn't win the year, but it's an easy 5 stars for me. I think it corrects every issue that was going on with their previous records leading up to this. I think the production is great, excellent arrangements. The songs are kind of hypnotic. They kind of put you into a trance almost with some of the rhythms and repetition, but they still build and they swell. They're not overly repetitive. I think all the songs are dramatic, memorable. I think the band is very patient. They don't rush into things. They let things kind of build slowly and develop. Incredible drumming, one of the best drum records of the 21st century. Bryan Devendorf is writing basically rhythmic hooks that lock you into the songs as much as the lyrics and the melodies do. Kind of a la Ringo in that way. The horns and strings, top notch. All the additional musicians incorporated brilliantly. Hard to list a favorite song because I think every song on here is fantastic. So many cool lyrics as well. Yeah, perfect record. 5 stars for High Violet.
I'm also dishing out 5 stars for my number 1, but it's Trouble Will Find Me, and the curse of the years they choose to put albums out. 2013, this is like one of 7 5 stars I gave for that album, which is a lot. It's a really heavy year for me. I love it. But Trouble Will Find Me, 5 stars, could have won several years for sure. And you said a couple of things that I think are really nice observations. Drum hooks. Yeah, I mean, writing drum parts that get stuck in your head is something that not everyone does or attempts to do or can do, but he does for sure. And drama, yeah, their songs are very dramatic. I love it. Without being theatrical and over the top, there's just a lot of really good drama to it. And this whole album feels that way to me. It is like a really nice, slowly boiling point sort of drama with a resolution. I love this album. I Should Live in Salt is amazing. I think this album is sort of their brightest. It's kind of like their Ray of Light album. It's the most sensual. It has just like these feelings of like content. I really like it. There's like a really nice, nervous and worrisome quality to their work leading up to this. This one's still a little bit shadowy with doubt and mechanisms out of control that can bring you feeling down again. But it's like also kind of self-aware with its lyrics because it's like, all right, we're happy, we're in a good place, but we're also aware of trouble, demons, humiliation. All of this could happen any second. So you got to appreciate what's going on now. The album's like more serene, more at peace, centered. It's much more reined in to me compared to High Violet. Though there are moments where you get these big emotional crescendos, but overall, I think it's a really mature perspective of their own content and themes. So it is kind of self-aware, but not entirely. I think the compositions don't really take off quite as much, which gives it really great balance and craft. Obviously slower and less energy than I think than High Violet, but I don't think it detracts in every way. I think it's got a really cool heavenly sound. I love when Heaven Faced comes in. I think it's perfectly placed. I Need My Girl, I really dig. I love Pink Rabbits, love the piano on that. Adore the lyrics on Slipped when he's like, I will spill my guts out. Ends with Hard to Find, which is really beautiful. Not a song less than really good on this for me. I think it's great. The whole album feel just leaves me with like this really fulfilling, cleansing feeling that like you're happy to be alive. It just washes over me and goes right through me. It affects me like very few other albums do. I think it's phenomenal. I think it's a work of art. Trouble Will Find Me, my number 1, 5 stars. So yeah, we didn't see eye to eye with our ranking that much, but I'd say our affection for the band is pretty much on the same level. So that's good.
Yeah, I wasn't too surprised by anything. And I think this is a band where you can have Sleep Well Beast at the bottom and I can have it third. And I don't know, nothing really feels that shocking because all the records are kind of, pretty good. So not going to be a whole lot of controversy, I don't think.
You essentially went in chronological order other than High Violet. You just put that in the end. And I think your whole list is chronological other than that.
Yeah. So yeah, Trouble Will Find Me is the only record that I don't think is better than the one before it.
So you, when they release a new one, you're going to be pretty enthusiastic, as will I.
Waiting for them to get back up to the level of High Violet, but they should be right about there pretty soon.
Have you seen them live?
No.
I have not either. And even though I do not like their live albums very much, I still want to see them live. I mean, you can't judge seeing someone in person based off the live albums, but I should note that I'm not crazy about their live albums, which is usually a pretty big deal for me, but doesn't hinder what I think about them as a band. Now, if I go see them live and they suck, I will be let down.
Well, let us know what you think of the National, what you think of our lists, and how you rank their records down in the comments. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed yet, and hit the bell for notifications so that you know when the new videos are coming out. Check down in the description for links to all of our social media accounts, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Follow those to find out what's coming up on the channel. And check our website out as well. And yeah, I guess we'll see you tomorrow for our top 10 favorite national songs. We'll see you then.